Hello all, and welcome to another Props 3D build. Today, we're going to be building the Blamcon AutoCop. The AutoCop is a 3D printable, fully functional light gun compatible with PC, Mac, and Linux. The AutoCop works with a surprising number of Steam games, as well as Blamcon's own shooting gallery game. The AutoCop features a slide recoil, a working A on this side, and B button, as well as a LED for feedback. If you want to know more about how to get started with the software and games, go to Blamcon.com where we have a full guide. We also, on Blamcon.com, have a manual on how to build this, as well as a parts list for sourcing yourself, as well as everything you need to get going with Blamcon. So I highly recommend you check that out for more information, but this video is about how to build the AutoCop. So let's start with the 3D prints. The AutoCop is surprisingly easy to print, only consisting of 6 parts. This is their orientation on the printer. There's a right, a left side, a front end that I recommend printing vertically, the slide, a holder for the rumble, and never forget the trigger. That's about it. We'll be taking the support material off in a second, but first, I want to show you the tools you need to make it, which is also surprisingly simple. These 4 here are nothing but screwdrivers. We have a number 1 and a number 2 Phillips, other way around actually, a 2.5 and a 2mm hex. We have a M4 tap. It is recommended, but not needed. A 4mm drill bit, and as usual, I use milling bits for their accuracy. A 2mm drill bit, which in this case is a drill bit, and an 8mm bit. You don't really need this. I use this to clean out the buttonhole, but just showing you what I use. The only thing you need that actually plugs in is the soldering iron. Pretty much any soldering iron will work. I like these little USB irons, wire cutters, a pair of pliers. These are my support material tools. We have a pair of tweezers, a 2mm and a 6mm carving tool, as well as an awl, then basically your X-Acto knife. If you want to link to all the tools I use as well on the Blamcon website, I have links to tools, parts, everything you need to get going. So let's go through all the non-3D printed parts you'll need to build the AutoCop. This is a kit for the AutoCop we sell over on Blamcon.com. We also have a parts list in the manual and on the website that give you every part. You are more than welcome to source yourself, but these kits are everything you need aside from the 3D prints, all ready to go, including the wires all color-coded and cut to size. So let's have a look. First, we have the solenoid. Then we have all the wires we're going to need. This is a wide-angle lens. You don't necessarily need this. I don't use it, but if you want to be really close up to the screen, a wide-angle lens is a huge help. We have all the screws, and we have the non-3D printed parts, and finally, we have the infrared positional camera. This is what tracks the 4 IR points to allow the camera to track the gun's position in 3D space. So let's set these 3 aside and go through the first baggie of parts. We have a already done USB cable as well as a bare USB. You are more than welcome to make your own, but I make one for you. As well as for the LED, we have a NeoPixel LED and a diffuser. This requires gluing. Not everybody has a glue gun, so there's a ready-to-go one as well. I don't want to take away the making experience for you, but these are the 2 hardest parts, and I give you options. Then we have 2 8mm by 4mm by 0.5 brass washers. We have your A and B button, a 7mm rumble motor, a GX16 adapter, a trigger switch, then the 2mm bars for the trigger switch, the bar for the trigger itself, and finally the trigger spring. That's pretty much it. So now let's match up the wires. If you need the wire lengths, I will overlay them on the screen as I lay them out, and you can also get them from the manual. This bit of black wire is extra in case you need more. The B button uses blue. B is blue. The trigger is yellow. There is a long wire that goes with the trigger and the A button. It bridges the two. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. We have the gray A button. This is for the 12 volt. Then we have your USB wires. And finally, we have our LED wires. For the screws, let's lay them out. I will also overlay the screws here so you can see the screws you'll need, but I'm just going to lay them out nicely. And this is everything you need to get going. So I'm actually going to move these up a little bit to get them out of the way and start by removing the support material on our 3D prints. This is all we need. Every now and then we'll need some pliers, but this comes off pretty easy. The trick I find is to go around the edge and try to lift it up and pry it off the bottom. You can actually find pre-supported files on Blamcon.com as well that are ready to go for many common printers. Just tear this off. Can do a little cleanup in here. And for any screws that are filled in, we can simply take a pair of tweezers. Now I like to take this little 2mm here and just do a little cleanup around where the LED goes in. Nice and easy, and otherwise, yeah, it looks good. So I'm just going to quickly take this 8mm and clean up the hole for the switch. This is entirely optional. That's all we needed that for. And then I'm going to take my 2mm and clean up the holes for the trigger pins. There we go, just those two. Then the 4mm and clean up just gently there. And another thing I like to do with the 4mm is any hole that goes all the way through. In the 3D models, I undersize these slightly because if you have a different extrusion multiplier, etc., you might end up with a hole too big. Now, it's easy to make a smaller hole bigger, but the other way around is nigh impossible. So depending on your clearances, this will either be exactly the right size, or I recommend that you just go through. And now this is only for the holes that go all the way through. Super, super important. If the hole doesn't go all the way through, that means the screw grips into it. And if you cut it to 4mm, this screw will no longer grip into it. So this is just a bit of a quality of life improvement. It is not required. So I cleaned out this hole, this hole, this hole, and this hole for the trigger with the 4mm bits, none of the other ones. Now let's take the support material off the other side. Make sure that's nice and clean. Just going to take the 2mm and clean that little gap out. Then I'm going to just do the same thing. Clean this a little bit. So I'm going to clean around here to make sure it's all smooth. Do that on the other side, just to make sure it's nice and clean. So you just kind of stab it and lift it out. Sometimes you got to give it a bit of a twist. Oh, top came off. Twist it again. And there we go. Never puts up much of a fight. Then the 4mm. And I'm going to do these two 4mm here. So there's most of it. Now for the slide, very, very easy. Just going to crack it a little bit on both sides. Now the front, pull off the sides. This one's kind of fun. Just work it into there. Hear all that cracking? There. Be able to just pull that off the back. Push that inside. Grab a pair of pliers. There, just pull that straight out. It's kind of fun. Beauty. So last but not least, and take the 4mm one more time. Clean this up and wiggle this around a bit. I want to make sure that when I put the pin through, that it's pretty smooth. There you go, that's pretty nice. I can set to the side with the trigger. Let me just clean all this out of the way. Even dry assemble these. Looking like a thing already. All right, now let's match up the wires with the parts they go with. I'm going to do the trigger first, then the gray. Then I'm going to take the ones I've done already and move those aside. The LED and the USB. Then we're going to grab our rumble motor, and I'm going to grab a ruler and measure out 25mm, 2.5 centimeters. Give it a cut. And then strip the ends. Usually just take a knife and give it a bit of a nick. And pull it off. There. And the camera. Going to cut the connectors off flush. As flush as I can get. And then also strip the ends. It's all ready to go. And the rumble motor. I am going to measure out 12 centimeters. Cut them off. And also strip the ends. There. Oh, I forgot about the star of the show, the Blamcon core. This is included in all of the kits, as well as we sell it separately on blamcon.com. Only piece that is very difficult to source yourself because it has all of these SMD components on it to handle rumble and recoil, which we actually solder in-house. So let's take all of this, move over to the soldering station, solder it all up, and put it together after. Heater tip up to 400. Let's start with our USB and GX16. First thing is let's straighten these out and tin them up. My favorite way to tin is to heat from the underside and then touch the soldering iron to the wire at the same time. Oof, gonna need to tap that off. Now we are going to tin our USB and tin our USB connector. To tin the GX16, we're going to hold the soldering iron off to the side. You see the little U-shaped gap here in the pins? We're just going to hold it to the side and feed the solder in. Get it melting. and then fill the gap. For the USB, we're going to carefully touch the solder and the pad at the same time. Pretty easy, actually. There. I find it's easier to add the wires to the USB first. Just hold them in your hand, line them up, there, easy does it. Now we're going to separate and tin one end of our 12-volt wire. Start with the black on 6. And then the red on 3. Green on 4. Let's put a little bend in it first. White is 5. Put your black for your 12-volt on 2. And 12-volt red goes to 1. So now let's do the trigger switch. The first thing I recommend is to take a pair of pliers, grab the little bit that sticks out, only the little bit, and then twist just at the base. And that gives the tiniest little bend. That's all you're looking for. It just makes the trigger a titch smoother. And it's totally optional. So you want to solder to the common here and to the normal open here. This is normal closed. We don't want to use it. So we take the black and we're just going to add some solder. Same for the yellow. And there we go. So that does the trigger. Now our B and A buttons. So we're going to do these one at a time, just putting them through the hole. And just put the other blue wire through the hole and solder it up. And just one side for the A button. I'll show you why later. So there are our A and B buttons. Now let's do the LED. I recommend you put it in this way. The arrow points away from where we'll be soldering. And just tin each of the 3 pads. Again, look, arrow pointing this way. I'm only tinning these 3 pads. Let's tin the 3 wires. And there's the LED. So now let's grab the left side of the frame, the trigger, and the A button. And put in the 2 pins. Then we'll put the A button just on the edge of the pins. Then I'm going to tuck the yellow wire underneath. Sometimes I find it's best to bend the terminals down just to make sure they don't get caught. Now let's take the nut off. Run the A button through the hole. Drop on the nut and tighten it up. So now, using a sharp knife, we want to nick the black wire and pull the insulation off. This way it can go around the post. Just a tiny little nick. So now we can pull the insulation out, wrap it around. It usually stays pretty well in place. And now let's add a little bit of solder. Okay, now that's all ready. We can take our camera and insert it down the barrel. Comes out the bottom like that. And we can finally start soldering onto the core. I'm going to move it out of the way and start with the B button, the rumble, the LED, and the core. You can see here it says RGB, ERM, which is the rumble, B, trigger, A, and camera. So let's start with the LED. We are going black, red, and white. Now let's do the rumble. The square hole is negative. There we go. And now the B button. Doesn't matter which one is which. Now let's grab our GA16 and run the 12 volt. Be very careful that the circle is positive and the square is negative. You don't want to confuse those two or your recoil is just going to be stuck on. There you go. Now let's do the camera. Camera goes red. Let's solder these one by one. So then green, yellow. Whoops, it looks like we got a bit of solder in the hole when we were lining it up with the camera. If you get solder in the hole, the best thing to do is to tin your wire, then heat the hole and run the wire through. Nice and easy. Then the black wire, clean them up a little bit, touch up the ends. All right, and now we're going to solder on the trigger. Goes through the circle hole. And then the A button, which also goes through the circle hole. And the black wire, which goes through the square hole of the A. And solder it up. Now, finally, we're going to grab the other side. And we're going to feed the solenoid wires up through the hole. And solder them onto the core. The polarity is irrelevant. They're both the same, so it doesn't matter which one is which. So with that, we've got it all soldered up. Let's review. We've got the solenoid going to the solenoid. They have no polarity, doesn't matter. We've got the 12 volt going through the positive, the circle, negative going to the square, the camera, the A button, the trigger, with the ground for the trigger being shared with the A, the B button, ground and signal don't matter, the rumble motor, where the red wire is connected to the circle, Then we have the LED where it goes signal, power, ground. And that's it. Let's take it all back. You're such a cat. Scooch, 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 scooch. You want a spring? You want a spring? You want a spring? Go get it. There, that took care of that. Okay, here we are back. We've got all the parts laid out, and let us add the diffuser to the LED. So we're going to bend these straight. Now, a sane person would put this in a holder or a little double-sided tape and attach it, but I am immune to the pain of glue. I would not recommend this, but in the sake of expediency, I'm going to take the glue, fill up. There we go. I start from the bottom, try not to get any bubbles in it. Give that a few seconds to cool. And then gently insert the LED. And now you can take the excess glue and just take it off with a paper towel or wear gloves, and all done. Now, let us screw in the Blamcon core first, followed by screwing in the rumble mortar. Grab our smallest 2mm screws and our smallest screwdriver. Oops. Magnetic screwdrivers bite both ways. It's not a good shot. This gimbal is controlled with an Xbox controller. There, that's better. Actually, I have the focus over here as well. Rather proud of this setup. Being a one-man band here, it's not all that easy to film and keep all these cameras and lighting and everything else all in focus, not get my hands in the way of the shots. So I've been working hard to improve the set and add all of life's little conveniences. Now the rumble cover. The rumble should sit nice and snug as well. Okay, make sure that is nice and snug. It shouldn't move. Now we can add the LED into its track. Oh, actually, but first, plug in the USB. Let's plug the USB in. And let's loosen up the GX16. Oh, still a titch of support material down in there. So for the GX16, we're going to make sure that, oh, I got it right. It should be not tight. It should be snug, but if it's too tight, you won't be able to get the two sides together. Now, let's put in the LED, and same thing with the B button. We want it snug, not tight. Little thread locker on both of these never hurt anything. Just trying to get it just right. Perfect. So now I'm going to take the 3 wires that go to the front, run them into this track over top of the trigger switch. And now I'm going to take one of these washers. I'm going to insert the trigger. And when you push the trigger in, make sure you don't actually hit the leaf on the spring on the switch there. Yeah, so just like that. Put the second washer in. Then put the spring in. Now put the camera in the track. These should all be nicely in this little track here. And we are going to close it up. We're going to take the solenoid, put it into its own track, and then we're going to very carefully bend the solenoid wire this way, and we should be able to close it up nice and snug. Everything should sit completely flush. Trigger spring should be nice. A little bit of a two-stage there, smoother take up and release. Very nice. And let's add our screws, starting with the long 25 mils. And flip it over. And we want a 25 in the magazine release and 2 20s in the back. All right, now before we attach these, we have 2 things to do. First off, we have to take one of these set screws, use the 2mm hex, and we got to run it in to hold the camera in place. Now, you hear this? If you have a long enough 4mm tap, which I don't, it would be a very good idea to tap it. Now, if you don't, like me, you're going to go like this. Wiggle it to cut the threads in. Otherwise, if you apply too much torque, you may strip it. It's pretty easy to do this. You'll see it loosens up after a couple of turns. And all that crazy snapping is because this is a very long hex driver. There we go. Okay, now the orientation of the camera is not what you expect. So the LED faces left. So let's stick the LED left, slide it in, and we can do the fine adjustments later. Now, if you don't want a lens, mount it flat. If you do want a lens, let's put the lens on it for fun. We're going to mount the lens first, then mount it in, and screw it tight. Not super tight. There, that's perfect. Now, the second thing is we're going to take our M4 taps, and we are going to tap these set screw holes. You don't need to tap it like the other ones. I like to tap these ones. These don't have as far to go, so these are actually easier to do than the one I just did there. Okay, flip it over. Alrighty. Clean that up a bit by hand, and we will run the set screws in flush. Okay, flip it. All right, so what we're going to do is put the solenoid in, tighten it up until it stays, and then we're going to back this. Oh, I guess I didn't tap all the way there. Back it up a couple of turns. Do the same on the other side. Try to get those wires as flush as I can. All right. The trick here is to get the spacing on both sides equal. I'm going to back this out a little bit, and then I'm just going to go looks good to me. And then the front one. A little bit the other way. Quarter turn. All right. Now I'm just going to back it out a little bit. Now I have my flat. Just make sure it's in very flat and tighten it up pretty good. There we go. So it should be nice and rock solid. So now we're going to clip the front on. And then run in the last 2 screws on the frame. Very nice trigger action. All right. And now these wires just sit in the middle. If you really want, you can add a drop of glue to hold them where the camera goes. That keeps them still. I've never really needed to. They just kind of stay where they want, where they are. There's a nice thick track in there, so I'll leave that decision to you. This post, though, needs to be perfectly horizontal because we're going to run in the last screw. Put on the slide. Make sure it's nice and smooth. Then I'm going to stick this in here and make sure it goes all the way through. Now, this is an important bit. This should screw in nice and smooth the whole way. But if it's not lined up with the hole, it will get stuck. So make sure you are feeling for any resistance as it hits the solenoid. If it does, stop, line it up again, and then run it in again. Not a big deal. There. All right. That is a very nice smooth slide action. We have our lens installed, our trigger, our B button, and our A button with our LED. This is ready to go. Since the firmware is pre-installed in the Blamcon core, we should be ready to play. Let's go over to the arcade machine, calibrate this up, and play some games. Since the core already has the firmware installed, there's nothing we need to do except for align the camera, which we can do with our 2mm hex. Now, if you are building yourself, the firmware is always available from Blamcon.com. You only need to install it once. There is a firmware updater built into Arc. Arc is absolutely free from Steam, as is Blamcon Shooting Gallery, which is what we'll use to play a game after we got it configured. So let's plug in our cable and go over to Arc. Oh, our camera's way off. I guess I didn't have it as sideways as I thought. There we go. So let's just click a key to get in, go to load settings, go to testing and live view. There we go. Live view will show us what the light gun sees. We're pretty far away actually, because with the lens, you can get like way into it. So let's line up the camera. It turns green when it's aligned. And then we can just go in with our hex and tighten it up. Simple as that. While we're on the testing screen, trigger is working, A button's working, B button is working. That's it, we're good to go. This is Blamcon Shooting Gallery, free on Steam. Great way to practice your shooting and test your Blamcon. Let's calibrate it quickly. So you can calibrate anywhere in Blamcon. In games, in Windows, doesn't matter. Just hold the B button for 3 seconds. And shoot once to enter menu, again to enter calibration mode, and then shoot the cursor as it moves around the screen. And there we go, nicely calibrated. Let's try turning the crosshairs off. Ah. I would say that works pretty well. Let's head back and finish it off. And that is the build video for the Blamcon AutoCop. Thank you so much for taking your time to watch this video. I hope this has either inspired you to build an AutoCop or you're building one along with this video. And thank you so much to the Patreons and supporters that help make Props 3D and Blamcon possible. Patreon support is what keeps the models and code free. Patreons get a lot of benefits like internal videos. I think we've done about 24 of those, as well as access to my model library and working folder. So what I'm making, you get in real time. So thank you so much to the VIP Patreons, Matthew Klabish, Fernando Diaz of Big Gun Arcades, Ron Steffenpool, Stephen Barsom, Philip Daniel of the Light Gun Lunatics group on Facebook and website, CC, Andrew Gergen, Big Homie, Chef J, Thomas Cooper, James Hargis, Jovan Fiddler, Paul Pardee, Racing Fuel, The Crooked Man, Varen, Daniel Whitehead, Ephraim Henry, Keith West, Ian Kowalski, Lee Felon, and Suwanaze from Retro City. Thank you all, and thank you to the Patreons in the crawl that follows. See you next time.
Experience modern light gun gaming with the Blamcon AutoCop. Painstakingly modeled from real references, the AutoCop looks and feels exactly like it should. Working slide recoil, AB buttons, LED indicator, and an ultra-quiet rumble mortar, this powerful pistol packs plenty of punch. Using infrared tracking, Blamcon is pixel accurate with gaming mouse performance. 3D print and build yourself with easy-to-follow guides, or get a Blamcon ready to go from the Blamcon store. Blamcon is handmade in Canada and individually tested and balanced for maximum performance. Dead or alive, this is coming with me from Blamcon.com.